Texas A&M will travel to Columbia, South Carolina. A&M is a narrow 2.5-point favorite. The total in this game is about 45. This game will be Saturday, 7:30 Eastern time on ABC. This is the 11th meeting between these two teams. They met for the first time back in 2014. A&M has won 9 of the previous 10. Their lone loss in the matchup is in 2022. That was at South Carolina. So the last time to Willie Bryce resulted in an L for the Aggies. One thing of note here, South Carolina has been a team. They're coming out of the bye week this week. This game will be played in November. South Carolina has been a team that's played their best football under Shane Beamer later in the season. Not great in August, September, and October, but in November, we've seen them be a completely different outfit. Just like we saw a couple years ago, the team in 2022 that beat Tennessee, the team in 2022 that beat Clemson, against Power 4 competition in August, September, and October, they are 6-16. That's right. You heard that right. 6-16 in August, September, and October. But under Shane Beamer, the Gamecocks are 7-4 against Power 4 teams in November. So clearly, they peak as the season moves a little bit forward. Question number 1. Who ends up starting at quarterback for Texas A&M? Will it be Connor Wigman or will it be Marcel Reed? Now, two very different skill sets. Wigman gets the start last week, gets the hook midway through the third quarter. He wasn't seeing the field very well. He wasn't very accurate. Some of the throws he did throw accurately were thrown with way too much pace. I mean, just right off receivers and running backs' chests, but he threw them 1,000 miles an hour from 7 yards away. He just clearly looked very uncomfortable. And the pass rush from LSU was having an effect on him. As a result, I think he completed like 6 out of his 18 passes. They put Marcel Reed in the game. And well, I think a lot of people looked at Marcel Reed he put a lot of jolt into the offense. All that is true. He also was afforded the benefit of unbelievable field position in most of the drives that he was on the field. So Marcel Reed was put in really good situations, but it was hard to ignore just how much more efficient the offense operated with Reed at the quarterback spot. I think it's going to be Marcel Reed. I'm not sure anybody knows for sure. And if I were Mike Elko, I wouldn't tell anybody. What do you stand to gain by telling them, yeah, we're going to go with the drop back quarterback or we're going to go with the quarterback that really has the run element? How would you give them the answers to the test? Make them prepare for both, and then we'll find out on Saturday who gets the start. Like I said, expect it to be Marcel Reed. South Carolina, by the way, they have struggled a little bit on designed quarterback run. They have been really good on defense. I mean, really, really good on defense. But this would be a stat that would probably lead me to think about maybe going with Reed. South Carolina is allowing 4.7 yards per carry on designed quarterback runs this year. That's the second worst in the SEC, trailing only LSU, who gives up over 6 yards per carry. And LSU, of course, struggled last week when playing against Marcel Reed. So I anticipated being Reed, but nothing would surprise me. It is a super hostile road game in the SEC, so maybe going with the veteran gives you a little bit more stability there. I don't know. Either way, that's something that we absolutely have to get answered early in the game. Question number 2. Can Texas A&M run the football? I think we know the answer to that, right? It's just, can they do it against this defensive front? Now, we know Texas A&M wants to just pound the football between the tackles. And that's who they are. That's what they've become. Whether it's Reed at quarterback, whether it's Connor Wigman at quarterback. We spent a lot of time talking about the quarterback situation, but this offense and their MVP this season is Le'Veon Moss. And the way he gets downhill, the way guys just bounce off him, when you watch Le'Veon Moss, the guy just runs angry. And you can't bring him down. And I'm watching LSU, a group that has guys that will play on Sundays on their defense, and they're just bouncing off the running back. It's amazing. And there's a reason why Le'Veon Moss is in the top 15 of ball carriers nationally in yards after contact. He averages 4 yards per carry after contact. The guy is just really difficult to bring down. And then, hey, just when he gets tired, hey, in goes Amari Daniels. And now you got to stop a guy that is now 5'9", 215, who's also extremely tough and is really shifty with great open field speed. Now, we know South Carolina is a super athletic defense. Like their edges of their defense, those two defensive ends, Dylan Stewart and Kyle Kennard, those guys are so athletic. They can run, they can close. And if you try to win on the perimeter against them, you're going to have a really hard time. Now, let's just be real. Running it outside the tackles against South Carolina is probably not a recipe for long-term success. They're really good in the alleys. They have safeties that are all 210, 215 pounds that'll come up and hit you. And they have defensive ends that can flat out fly. So you're probably going to have to try to attack South Carolina right up the middle. And I don't know if you can, because they have defensive tackles who, while all the attention goes to their ends, understandably so, their defensive tackles and their linebackers are a really underrated group. Really underrated. So can A&M run the football with the same type of success that they were able to run the football against LSU? I think they ran for 240 in that game, and that obviously gave them the win. Question number 3, can the Gamecocks neutralize what I think is the best defensive line in the country? South Carolina's offensive line has at times been a little bit vulnerable. They have a young left tackle that's a true freshman, and he's going to be going against Nick Scorton. He's going to be going against Shamar Stewart and Shamar Turner. These are 3 guys along the Aggie defensive line that are take over the game as good as anybody in college football at their position. They are amazing. And wow, hey, here's the good news. South Carolina's got a pretty good defense that Lenore Sellers and that offensive line go against every day. So they're probably not going to be surprised by the athleticism because they see it every day in practice. But on the interior, these defensive tackles are incredible. And Mike Elko does a really good job of scheming things up. And Mike Elko does a really good job of bringing pressures, and they are able to kind of change things week to week. So that's going to be really interesting. And if you look at Lenore Sellers, his numbers under pressure have not been great. When he gets pressure, he is a young quarterback. He does not do a great job of beating the pressure with his arm. He tries to beat it with athleticism, and that's led to 32 sacks this year. South Carolina has given up 32 sacks. That's the second most in college football behind Oklahoma. Okay. They also have 13 sacks on third down. So if they get into third and long situations, that could be really difficult to contain this defensive line as well. So very, very curious to see how Dowell Loggins, the offensive coordinator for South Carolina, how he tries to attack this group along the defensive front. It should be amazing. It's going to be a great matchup. And then final question here. Does either passing attack scare you? I really am just flat out curious. You guys have watched the games just like I have. I look at South Carolina's passing attack, and I look at their inconsistencies that they've had at times at wide receiver. I think they have some good wideouts. Like I think Mazio Bennett's a really good slot receiver. I think Jared Brown, if he can get back and if he can be healthy, he can be a good, solid catch and run option. I think Nick Harbor's got tons of God-given ability, but the consistency and the refined route running is not there all the time. I think they have good tight ends. I look at the receivers for A&M at the same time. I think, all right, Noah Thomas has got a lot of length. He's 6'6". I think they have a couple of solid guys in the slot that can do some nice things. But, man, I think these two offenses are pretty similar. I mean, they really are. They're pretty similar. Now, I think A&M's offensive line is playing at a higher level than what we've seen from South Carolina's offensive line, but both have super physical running backs. Both have quarterbacks, assuming Marcel Reed is playing for the Aggies. Both have quarterbacks that can really break you down with their legs. Both have receiver cores that have shown at times to be really good and then at times to be somewhat inconsistent and at times will sometimes disappear. Both have pretty physical and underrated tight ends. I just think these two offenses are very, very similar. And this thing could come down to who plays better and who avoids the critical mistake. I'll be on the call alongside Sean McDonough and Molly McGrath, so we look forward to having you alongside us at 7:30 Eastern Time on ABC.